January 3rd. 7:05. How about that? Council, we have an agenda that's been circulated with the package. Any errors or omissions from the agenda is presented. Hearing none, someone move its adoption. Moved by Councillor Back, second by Councillor Forbes. Prepared to call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Council, we have a couple sets of meeting minutes that have been circulated with the package. This is from October 27th, 2025 and November 24th, 2025. Are there any errors or omissions from those meeting minutes that need to be considered? None. Will someone please move its adoption? Moved by Councillor Back. Is there a seconder on the matter? Seconder? Second by Councillor Murray. Prepared to call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried. All right, Council. I just had a couple of lead-in comments myself on this, just very quickly. This session tonight leads into several other sessions. So you're going to start to see your calendars populated with February 9th, February 10th, an end of February workshop. And so this is sort of to get everybody on the same playing field, and then we're going to have the specific discussions on implementation of Bill 25 and SMOO, on the single family zoning, on all of those other pieces. And so tonight doesn't ask for any specific direction. It's going to be really just preparing the field so that we can have those more detailed discussions on the 9th and 10th and in at the tail end. But at this point, do you want any other introductory? Mr. Smith, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, rest of the council. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. Just get the presentation popped up.
Can we do that on directly on the computer screen?
That would be helpful.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a hard copy in front of me. If everybody has hard copies, we can just go off that.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm sure it
All right, I will start in. Thank you. We'll go old school. It reminds me, I had a prof in grad school always said, come prepared with hard copies because you never know. So this is 20 plus years later, words of great advice coming true.
And that degree paid off. You learned something.
I'd like to think so. Thank you. So staff are here tonight to present some of the strategic priorities for the community and development planning that are looking to take place in 2026. I'll provide a bit of context for those projects. As the mayor intimated, we are on a pretty set timeline and there are some kind of fixed dates coming forward. So wanting to make council aware of how that is all going to unfold. And so, yeah, the second slide moves on to a bit of context here with the relevant provincial legislation. As council is well aware, there's been a series of legislative changes impacting land use planning over the last several years, guiding so much of the work that development planning has been undertaking over the past couple of years, such as the OCP update, the housing needs report that underpin that as well. And then, as we are well aware, Bill 25 is now requiring us to consider SMOO again, which we had already previously addressed in June of 2024, and also some of the Bill 16 powers that enable us to look into things such as inclusionary zoning are also influencing our work plan. Another important consideration, of course, is to make sure our work are realizing the council's 6 priorities that this council established at the beginning of their term. Our projects are structured to fix under that. For those who are following, we do have some projects listed underneath the priorities that council has established. Some of them that community and development planning are leading, but also are contributing to. So some of the ones that we're contributing to that we are not leading, such as the strategic transportation plan, the implementation of the economic development strategy, are some projects that other groups are leading, but we are supporting. We're also leading projects that I won't go into a lot of detail tonight that are going to realize council priorities such as the senior strategy, looking at DAPR, which is being led by development planning, an important project that's been unfolding for several years. And then finally, we want to kind of touch in on some of the key projects that staff are working on and wanted to kind of focus some of the conversation on tonight as well. The first one of those is small scale multi-unit housing, SMOO. So Bill 25, as council is aware, we need to have this consideration and implementation of SMOO by June 30th of this year. So that is driving an important timeline. And staff will be coming back to council for a workshop on this topic, dedicated entirely to this topic on February 9th. We'll be exploring some issues around exemptions for natural hazards, protecting future growth and development potential in frequent transit areas that may or may not be impacted by SHMOO, and also looking at some of the technical considerations in terms of the number of buildings, building heights, any increased FSR that council might want to consider in implementing small-scale multi-unit housing. That will be something we can go into the details on February 9th. Closely related to this project, and we'll be running together, is a very large project that's been underway for almost over 3 years now, which is the zoning bylaw rewrite or update. This is going to lead to an update to our 1965 zoning bylaw. I think of some of the images and look at what we're trying to achieve in terms of streamlining and updating and modernizing a very important regulatory tool. And that will be run together with small-scale multi-unit housing, because to implement small-scale multi-unit housing will necessitate changes to the zoning bylaw. Also running with that will be some updates to the OCP will be necessary to implement some of the changes that are being proposed as the zoning bylaw update, and are part of some of the possibilities that we'll be discussing further on February 9th around how we may or may not choose to respond to some of the issues that small-scale multi-unit housing raised for the district. Another important topic that will be further updates will be provided is consideration of inclusionary zoning. So this is a tool introduced by Bill 16 that allows for a requirement for affordable housing to be required as part of a zoning bylaw as of right. Council discussed this on December 8th, and staff are undertaking further analysis and will be coming back to council with an update on the next steps for that project in the first quarter of this year. And another important priority for community development planning is the completion of some of the in-stream development applications that will realize some of council's priorities. So these are rezonings involving social housing or large developments that will deliver affordable housing and or rental units as well. So in terms of timeline, we've mentioned the February 9th and 10th workshops for SHMOO and zoning that will come together. There's additional workshops being considered at the end of February as well. But important timelines to remember is to have a legislative requirement in SHMOO by June 30th. So when we've worked that back, that looks at kind of delivering first reading on the zoning bylaw update, which will contain the necessary amendments in mid-April and a public hearing in May, and that'll set us up to meet that deadline. So we're working on some pretty tight timelines in order to deliver on 2 of these key projects. That's something to keep in mind as we move forward through the first half of this year. In conjunction with that, the in-stream development applications that realize some of council's priorities, we want to ensure as best as possible, working with the developers and the applicants for those projects, that we do our best to complete those projects where possible with this council prior to the election that's coming in October 20th, and in view, avoiding any disruptions that may or may not cause. Another topic that we wanted to kind of bring in front of council tonight that we'd like some direction and have some further discussion with council on is our town and village center implementation plans. These town and village center plans were primarily adopted by resolution by council shortly after the adoption of the current OCP in 2011. So many of them are quite dated. The most recent one, the Maplewood Plan, was adopted in 2017. The bulk of them were for Lower Capilano. Lionsgate was adopted in 2013. Lower Lynn or Lynn Creek was also adopted in 2013. Edgemont was 2014, and Lynn Valley was 2015. So they're getting quite long. They've realized tremendous success for this community in terms of new units that have been developed under those. And these plans kind of provide a finer grain detail than what you can find in the OCP in terms of some of the design guidelines, where you want to see amenities and services, particular for those specific areas. So we're now, many of them are over 10 years old. Some of the priorities have been realized, and some of the priorities have shifted. So staff are beginning to see a need to revisit some of these in light of the new realities that are facing some of those centers as we continue to grow and deal with the challenges of living in this region. So that will be something that we'll be looking for some conversation and perhaps some sense of council where they see the priorities in terms of revisiting some of those plans. And also, some of the topics that were raised when we most recently looked at the OCP update did consider some substantial changes to some of those centers. So some of those ideas are also shaping some of the conversation, certainly at the staff level, approach those. So a wonderful slide to finish things off with kind of some suggested topics for discussion, but it's there for you in your package if you'd like. Perhaps we would really appreciate any council feedback or discussion around some of the changes being contemplated at a high level and timing for the smooth OCP zoning bylaw update. And then finally, any feedback on town and village center implementation plans in terms of where you see the priority, some of the timing and scope for those as well. Thank you. Staff are here for any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I've got just one quick question. Well, when we went through the rezoning discussion last year, it was an option A, option B. Option A contemplated adding some areas to town centers or expanding the size of the town centers, and as a mechanism to sort of maintain the ratio of units in the town centers, we expanded the town centers. So it was one of the proposals under A that didn't get passed by the council. In that discussion, I actually thought there was a lot of good work done on potential local neighborhood changes that should be considered by the council. And I do think we should probably start to plan to slot those in the planning group's schedule so that we're starting to look back at those areas. One area in particular was the area around from basically the Winter Club over to the top end of the Sealand Plan area, which is sort of that triangle that's hemmed in by the highway and then over to Mountain Highway. I think with such a significant change at 1200 Block East Keith, it makes sense to have an updated plan for that area and potentially facilitate some other development around that area to help with the uniformity of the new plan. It'll be otherwise sandwiched between density on that area. I think that's a good one that I'd certainly be supportive of us having a local discussion about. Another one that was in that plan as a discussion, although not on the scale I think was discussed in A, but I do think we have to address the issue of transportation planning on Marine Drive. And I think having an updated local discussion about what that will look like. Like we have the R2 being upgraded to the bus rapid transit program. And in that, there's going to be a tremendous amount of stress on the limited road width that we have through that section of Marine Drive. And I know it's not our oldest plan. We did I think most of that was done in around 2008 when we did the Marine Drive Master Plan and mostly upgraded to C9 zoning for the corridor there. But I happen to think it's timely in combination between what the Squamish Nation intend to do with their portion of Marine Drive in that section, but also because we have to figure out how to better accommodate the rapid bus through that area. And so I think those two developments in particular out of that discussion really sparked with me that those are plans that we really need to focus on being timely for local area adjustments. So I'd be supportive of those being considered. I have, that's enough to start me off anyway. I've got Councillors Back and Murray and Councillor Moss. So Councillor Back, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. And for those of us who were not on council when the implementation plans that you have listed for the key town and village centers came about, I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about the process of creating an implementation plan. What does that look like? What's the timeline? And are there things like the mayor has talked about that could be implemented without going through a whole, starting a whole new implementation plan? Like, are we updating, or is it really a full process each time?
I mean, every community would approach implementation plans differently, but my understanding of how the implementations were developed is that there was consultant support brought in to help, and they were probably a year-long minimum process to develop, do some consultation, terms of doing like the depth and detail that you find in some of those implementation plans would take some time and probably some additional consulting support. So, I don't think that kind of work and that extent of work had been contemplated for 2026. But as the mayor alluded to, in terms of some of the conversations we had around the OCP update and where we did extensive community consultation, we did have conversations around some of those centers and some of the changes that we contemplate there. So, I think there has been work done there. Could have, at this point, given the timelines and timeframes we have with this council, I don't think it would be realistic for us to undertake a full update to a specific implementation plan. But I stand to be corrected. We can scale a project as needed. And if that's council's wish, then certainly we could look at how we could implement that.
So some of the learnings from the OCP update process could be implemented without going through the process of coming up with a whole new implementation plan.
For example, the issues around Lionsgate and development of and supporting transportation in the Marine Drive corridor was a key driver for some of the elements you saw in option A, and some of the land uses that were proposed there was to address some of the very issues that the mayor raised around road width, getting development to support transit, supporting BRT and some of the investment planning that's planned there. Looking at, we did have conversations with the Squamish and wanting to coordinate with them in terms of some of their plans. So yes, I think, there has been a lot of work and thinking done that we could bring back to council on those areas.
I often talk about, the town centers which haven't quite come to be the, lively places that we envision them totally, and they're coming along, but even within the implementation plan, we haven't gotten to where we envision, when I think of Lionsgate, Lynn Creek, for instance. So, I'd be interested in kind of what are some of the specific things from the implementation plan, even just spending some time with each of them we could pull out.
Thank you. Next, I've got Councillor Muir.
Well, this is such a big, it's kind of overwhelming to embark on, trying to give our thoughts when we're looking at sort of a plan based on what? I need to see the economic issues. Where is data telling us how many jobs we've created, where we're losing businesses, what businesses have been impacted over the years, what kind of businesses, the challenge of business coming in. We really haven't had much of an update for many years in a serious way about how we're going to look at the OCP document and resolve the economic part of the plan, which has been relatively quiet. We've seen what's happened down by C-SPAN in regards to, the McKean property being squared off for parking and the impact of adding thousands and thousands of jobs to C-SPAN, but also the impact of businesses down there, businesses that, are challenged because they're landlocked because of the Phillips overpass. How do we support them? How do we maintain those businesses in our community? What kind of businesses are important to keep here and without pushing them off the North Shore because of redevelopment and the cost of land, the commercial properties? We're a port, we need to keep those businesses here, and slowly they have been shrinking over the years. And if we lose them, especially some of the trucking companies that we've got, and they're going to go to South Burnaby, South Surrey, I don't think we're going to be pleased by that. I don't think that's going to help us continue to maintain sustainability. So, I'd like to see a bigger picture. I'd like to understand all of these pillars before we silo them off into individual presentations and try to understand it. The mayor brings up a really great one. How are we going to deal with Marine Drive and the rapid bus? We haven't had a presentation from TransLink in quite some time. What's the update? Where is the funding? I've been lobbied all day today from the developers because of Metro's development cost charges that are coming in, and they want them rescinded back to the 2024 levels. The Prime Minister's indicated that, you know, we can't continue to spend money the way we've been spending it. And he's working hard to, you know, create more economic development with countries around the world. So, you know, there's just so much. We're in a correction period right now. That's what we're facing, a correction with residential development. You know, the numbers to fill those units are being restricted right now. And so I would like us to focus on cleaning up what we've already embarked on rather than, you know, looking at more and creating more. We have to understand what this is going to cost us and how we're going to pay for it, because it's not business as usual. You know, the legislation has changed a lot of things. You know, where once we had CACs, I can't remember, what are they called now? ACCs, and the restrictions around that. How is that all going to unfold? How is that all going to impact us? What is the cost of all of this going forward? We can control our land costs for taxation, but we're not able to control, without the rest of the region supporting us, those utility costs. And we've got to deal with that going forward, because they are going to rise. And we either have to flip some member jurisdictions at the board at Metro to even out this cost, and then face the implications of paying for Iona as a level playing field. So, you know, the best laid plans, right, do often go asunder. And, you know, I'd like to get sort of, and I think our new CAO, when he comes in at the beginning of February, probably wants to see where we're at. And I would really like to understand where we're at as well. I think too often we are being asked to make decisions in isolation of the bigger picture, to understand where we've been, where we currently are, and where we want to go. And I think we have to have a broader discussion. And I think we have to also understand that communication plan, because we continue to talk about engagement and consultation. A lot of the engagement that we're going to undertake in regards to the legislation by the province is really not asking people, what do you think? And if you tell us what you think, we'll pivot accordingly. It's basically saying, this is what's going to happen, and we're letting you know. So where is that big plan? Where's the big communication plan, where I think council has for a number of years, and certainly since COVID, been saying we want to get back out into the community. We want to have town hall meetings. We want to see people face to face rather than pop-ups and relying on people going online. There's so much information that you have and so little information I feel we have. We get very sort of basic information. It's, you know, even the communication that's coming from people at a town hall meeting or a development meeting. You know, we sort of get summaries, you know, and so I just think we need to see a big picture and take this opportunity at this time where there's this downturn to tell us where we've been, where we are currently, and then we can start talking about where we want to go. I think transportation is an important one. We talk about building more units, but we still have a bridge that is absolutely, completely ridiculous every single day. We have a lot of discussions to continue to have with the school district about supporting and building schools in these areas where we're densifying. And they just brought on the new elementary school in the city of North Vancouver at Cloverleigh. And when was the last time they built an elementary school? Like 25 years ago? I think that was
Then it was an actual new school.
A new school.
Not just a replacement.
Yeah.
of an old school.
A new school, we have over 25 years, maybe
Net
longer.
new was 25 years.
Yeah, 25 years ago. So, you know, I think there's lots of, you know, I'm glad we're starting to have this discussion. But I just think there's so much more information that we have to bring back in order to understand where we need to go. So those are my comments initially.
So I think I'm inclined to just give you 2-minute Coles notes on the transit thing, because I do think it is timely to have maybe a TransLink update for the North Shore.
I think the
So
community would like
bus-
an update too.
The bus rapid transit has to be funded in 3 parts: the design, the purchase of the buses, and then the day one funding to actually manage the roads. And in that capital fund for the new buses, actually, is also some changes in the roads as well. And so the design is funded and happening now. The capital project, there is money for some changes to roads, queue jumpers, and some other things along the way. But the bus purchase has not been approved yet. We can still, if the federal government comes forward with more funding, they only came forward with half of what had been committed for transit. And so at this point, we don't have enough money for the big bus purchase that was going to deliver buses for 2028, which is going to include the buses for the bus rapid transit programs. We are still advocating with them to get a new tax from the provincial government, potentially to be able to find a way to fund those things. And also, because the gas tax is declining, but also capital dollars from both the province and the federal government to help us get the buses. And so, but the planning is all currently approved, it's happening, it's funded, and it's a very active live discussion. Just this last week, they gave an update on the 3 BRT proposals. And so, yes, we could bring TransLink in to do a specific update on the North Shore portion of the R2.
And show council and show the community like what the alignment looks like. What is it gonna take to actually run that bus from Park Royal to the Second Narrows? What are we gonna be responsible for? How is it going to impact the Marine Drive corridor? If that's the alignment, or is it first, like, you know, or Welsh, like.
Generally speaking, it's following the current R2, the old 255, the old 239 route, which is largely Marine Drive in that section. And that is the trickiest portion in the district. The Main Street portion in the district, we have the space and we can make it work. It's the Marine Drive portion in the western part of the district that's going to be the biggest challenge.
So that will lead to assumptions about taking out left-hand turn lanes or taking out a lane. And how is that going to impact the business community? How is that going to impact the commercial and the industrial community? How is it going to impact the residential community? All of those things are, I have no idea, because I have seen nothing in regards to what that looks like. And even when we met with TransLink the last time, very few of our questions could even be answered.
It's in the planning process right
Is
now.
that a spider?
It's a critter.
What kind of critter?
Critter. I think that's.
Pine beetle?
It's a beetle, one of those
You could take it home
beetles.
as a pet.
Anyway, so don't step on it. Just get a tissue and pick it up and throw it out the
Apparently
window.
distract.
Oh, you just crushed it,
I was came over.
Mr. Environment.
So I appreciate the comments, and yes, it's timely to get an update on transit process on the bus rapid transit. The financial realities are, without additional funds from the province and the federal government, the 2027 investment plan is not moving forward at this time. It's just, in order to be in the investment plan, it has to be rock solid source of funding. And at this point, we don't have a rock solid source.
Okay, so that is a great segue into how do we just continue to keep adding things when we don't have even the transportation infrastructure and the funding to be able to support all of this new planning and redevelopment. And this is the challenge. We're doing things backwards, right? We need to understand the costs. We need to understand the budget. We need to understand where the funding's come from. We don't have that information. And I think we need it before we embark on all of these other scenarios.
Councillors Ma and Hanson. Councillor Ma.
Thank you. I have some similar thoughts to Councillor Murray. There is a lot here. It is a big bite, as they say. But when I look at these kind of council priorities, there's so much interrelationship that if you work on housing, well, you gotta get transportation, and then you gotta look at parks. So I know you appreciate that, but that's something that I'm sensitive to, that we can't just focus on one silo. Like, it can't all be just about housing. We need housing, but that can't be the only priority. There needs to be that balance. And I do like, this deliberate approach. And we do need to move forward with the best information that we have. And, I do appreciate this approach. A couple kind of more specific things, like I'm very sensitive to making sure that we have enough land set aside for our economic development. I look down on Pemberton, I look near the bridgehead, and there's housing, there's other needs coming in, and some of the affordable light industrial land is being, assessed at higher values, and it's causing businesses to have challenges and struggles. So we got to make sure we preserve that. And I'm just wondering, in terms of this council priorities, where would kind of like recreation centers, like housing is going to drive the need for more parks, court space, play space, where would that fall under? I'm just trying to make sure that it's part of it.
Well, you'll see on the subsequent slide, we have kind of underneath the, so there is some, like the parks acquisition strategy.
Okay.
That would fall under some of those other priorities. So I think those are other groups that are leading those kind of works. The emphasis of the projects that we kind of highlighted here does not by any means encapsulate the entire district is undertaking currently. Yep. The emphasis on what we highlighted here was the projects that community development planning are leading, yep, or having a substantial role. But yes, I mean, I'm not an expert and can't really speak to, our facilities planning and some, yep, of the work that was leading to that, but I have no doubt that that is unfolding and taking place, but that really wasn't the focus of what we were trying to communicate tonight.
Okay, that's
I have a little bit of, if I can interject, a little bit of update on the indoor-outdoor recreation assessment that the Rec Commission is doing. So we do know that they're planning to provide an update to council early this year, so that work is underway. We'll provide a North Van-wide perspective on the current state of facilities, amenities, and trends, look at long-term growth strategies and associated OCP updates.
Yeah. The one thing that I sense, and was wondering if you can comment on it, maybe did that one, but there seems to be the way I see it, it's very functional areas, transportation, housing. Is there a filter that's applied over all this to say our community is changing? The demographics are changing, we have new people coming in, it's maybe getting a little older, stuff like, where does that come in on all this?
Through your worship to Councillor Ma, I would say the OCP is our overall vision. That's okay, the one that kind of weaves everything together. Of course, there are many other plans. Another one, the Economic Development Strategy, which Council endorsed 2 years ago. The OCP vision, as we know, was not updated, didn't need to be updated for the update that we did this year that Council approved at the end of last year. But the next OCP update will be due in 2030. And we'll be building blocks over the years, including the next housing needs report in 2028, census data from the census being done this summer, and those results will come in over the, about a year or so. So I would just offer that the OCP is that overall vision. So,
is it the long form census this year?
A portion of it will be long.
21 was the last.
Received that will get the long form.
It was long.
It's mixed.
This year, yeah.
It's mixed, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Next, I have Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for the staff report. Thank you everyone for their questions and comments. A lot of big questions here. I'm going to keep my comments pretty specific. The first is a bit of a question. So on page 4, you list these local area plans, and then you say you're interested in our insight in the privatization, and I'll come back to that. But then you say staff also recommend consider the merits of updating plans for some of the district's smaller centers, such as Queensdale. Tantalized us a bit there with the phrase, some of the district's smaller centers. Which ones are you thinking about? And if you could just talk about what you mean by that phrase, some of the district's smaller centers.
Yeah, I mean, as part of the OCP update work, one of the scenarios looked at kind of that more dispersed, so still having that 75% growth in our 4 key growth centers and realizing the OCP vision that Ms. Atha referred to. So we looked at that dispersed growth. So, there was some consideration for Edgemont, which has an implementation plan was highlighted there. There was in the option A some changes to land use designations around Queensdale to look at kind of addressing some of the pressures there. Another one that comes to mind would be Parkgate as well, where we also looked at within option A, some consideration of additional density along that corridor. But, council chose not to pursue that at this time. And really at the end of the day, those smaller ones that don't have the implementation plans aren't really seeing the levels of growth that we are seeing in some of the centers. Councillor Back referred to some of the implementation plans where, we really haven't seen much growth. Look at Maplewood. We haven't seen a lot of change since the OCP and the adoption of the plan there. So, there's some of the smaller plans, but even I think some of our larger centers with a focus, they all warrant some attention, but I think, those are good points to make in terms of, we can't just consider the ones we exist. And there was that kind of little teaser about, there are other ones we could also consider too.
Teaser's dangerous.
Yeah.
Mr. Milburn.
Well, one issue that certainly came up in my mind was just seeing how much the city of North Vancouver has approved development of Lonsdale in relatively close proximity to the Queensdale and the other areas. And so there's this growing population. And so it's a question in my mind, is that demanding higher levels of service in the upper Lonsdale area that maybe warrants us taking a closer eye in the Queensdale area? There are some larger lots immediately adjacent to the commercial area as well that potentially have some redevelopment potential. That's a question mark. I'm not making decisions here. I'm just saying these are question marks that are raising in my mind with the amount of development we have seen and is ongoing in that that end of the corridor right here. So we're just kind of raising it as opportunities for council to look at, and we're looking for direction and a conversation about where council sees the priority.
So it's Queensdale, it's Parkgate, and Edgemont has its own village center plan, but
It does.
in terms of the ones that the smaller centers that you're referencing in that sentence there, it's really is it just Queensdale and Parkgate?
That from my perspective, yes, based on the work we did with looking at the OCP update and kind of how we could, playing around with different ideas around that. I think once you get beyond those centers, the ones that have those plans listed there, Queensdale and Parkgate, I think the level of change there, in my opinion, would not be worth warranting too much more. But of course, if council directs us to do that, we will consider other sectors.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I just wanted clarification back. And then you asked the specific question, and I'm going to give a specific answer. Council insight into which plans listed in table 1 should be prioritized. I mean, it seems to me the answer to that somewhat obvious just by looking at the table. Lower Capilano and Lower Lynn are the oldest plans. They have the greatest growth, and significantly, they're likely to be the most impacted by any transit upgrades such as the bus rapid transit. So, and the green drive transportation as discussed by Mayor Little. So that would be my specific answer to that request for feedback. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Miri.
Well, I was just going to touch on these smaller centers, like again, where's the transportation plan? Upper Lonsdale, like we've got a number of older apartment buildings there, and we need to protect those older buildings. We just can't afford to displace any more people. We've done that over the years. The city, the first trigger was a building that burnt down in Upper Lonsdale. The road network up there is very challenging. I don't know how you add more density. I'm up there a lot. I have services that I use up there. I do use the Queensdale Market, and I've got some other services up there, and it does provide service. That little Queensdale Market is a huge, important piece of that neighborhood. It's a massively important piece. So I get worried when we start talking about redevelopment, because we've redeveloped over the years in our town centers, and we've actually removed services from those areas, and we have not seen replacement of equal services. We've done Marine Drive. We've taken out lots of little small businesses, mom and pops, and now you got to drive further to find the same, daily services that you would use: the butcher, the baker, the grocery store, the vegetable store, and Parkgate. I think in the Seymour we have transportation issues, access issues. If the bridge is backed up, we are gridlocked. We've got Tsleil-Waututh has just opened Apex onto Mount Seymour Parkway. We've got to look at what impact that's going to have on the road network, given that they are continuing to redevelop. And then we've got a lot of social housing. The most social housing in the district and on the North Shore exists east of the Seymour River. And we need to protect that as well. And I worry about that sometimes. I worry about what is going to happen to that housing. And we need to protect it at all costs. It's critically important to the community. So, how do we go and start looking at how we could, reconfigure things when we have so many competing interests and concerns and issues that we continue not to be able to address?
I was just going to make a comment about Queensdale. It's a challenging area to create a neighborhood feel because it's the road network there is so busy. I would venture a guess, and it's just a guess, that Esso, which is actually 3 businesses in one, it's a gas station, a 7-Eleven, and a Tim Hortons, has got to be the busiest gas station in the district of North Vancouver. Maybe the Esso in Maplewood is a competitor, but this one with those 3 services in there, it's so busy in the morning getting in and out of that space. It's a challenging spot to reconfigure though because of the layout of the roads in that area. But if you were contemplating maybe a change of the Sutton building, the Queensdale Market, and maybe some of the things on the west side of the road, that may be of interest. But I will just say we had a very big problem in that neighborhood a few years ago with speculation. And so the building that used to have the 7-Eleven, so it's on the east side of the road at Queens and Lynn Valley Road, it's currently got the Critter Cub and daycare and whatever else in it. That facility has actually got latent zoning of 4 stories in it or something about that on it. And what happened was a new buyer went in and bought it and paid so much for it that it changed everybody else in the neighborhood, the gas station, the Harmony Donuts, the Starbucks, and everything else. Actually, Starbucks contributed to the problem too. Those 2 facilities together brought everybody up to 96% in valuation in 1 year. And so all of a sudden their taxes doubled. For all of the commercial businesses in there. So I'm very cautious about speculation value in that particular neighborhood. But there is actually already quite a bit of latent zoning in some of those other sites that are around there. So cautious about what we could also attract in and maybe solve. I point to something that's actually worked relatively well, which is at Delbrook Plaza, there was a new housing development that was done just on the side of Delbrook Plaza. And not only is it award-winning and it's lovely, it's been very well received in the community and supportive of that particular neighborhood building plaza that has a bunch of little services hidden into it. It's a real gem if you haven't been there before. Parkgate itself, it's it's already a very full service place. It has butcher, the baker, the full grocery store. It has a few different restaurant options. And so I'd say there isn't like a big push for it to change. It has the services that we need, and some of the other small centers are probably more in need of that. Again, that was achieved because the District of North Vancouver 30 years ago had a whole bunch of land it owned there and built a rec center, a library, a plaza, and then also what became the Safeway and all of the other stuff. I mean, when I was a kid, it was forest. And we used to go to the Max on the other side of the street because that was the only store in the bundle. And so because the district had so much land there, they were able to do something really cool.
No, but
We
they
don't
did,
have a lot of land in the western part of the district. We don't have that kind of ability to just.
but they did Parkgate based on the fact that they were going to clear cut the forests of Mountain and Cove Forest.
Yeah.
And build housing subdivisions and the CMHC lands. And then, Guard got in the way. And so that's why the Safeway originally went into that property.
Anticipating 3,000 more units in the neighborhood.
And they actually got it at the Tsleil-Waututh. So it didn't go up in the mountain, it went down into the First Nations.
But obviously the library and rec center and plaza were put in for those purposes because the district opposed that development on the CMHC lands at the time. But so if I'm talking smaller centers, I'd be interested in what you have to say about Queensdale, but I'd be really cautious just simply because of the speculation they've been through in the past and the latent density that's hidden amongst it. I know there was an interest in a seniors facility because they've already got the Churchill House, whatever the one is, right immediately next to the Queensdale neighborhood. And there was talk of another one on the east side, abutting onto 29. And I think that is owned by a developer, if I'm not mistaken right now. But it's a complex neighborhood to consider for redevelopment because 29th is offset. There's short blocks, so it's like light, and it doesn't function very well. Not just right now, where it's not functioning very well because of development, but generally speaking, it's just so congested with an intersection every 250 feet. Yeah, well, it seems, I know it's probably more like 1,000 feet, but
And yet
it feels like every 200 feet.
And yet those little mom and pop shops totally exist and have worked for years and years and years.
Harmon's been
Including
there
the
for
market and
over
The
40 years.
hairdressers and the eyeglass place and all sorts of businesses, the bike shop and the computer store
Don't forget the pub.
and the Queen's Cross.
Are we giving you the kind of feedback you're looking for, Jason? Because I don't have any other speakers, so if there's something else you want us to provide, then I'll go and shake the council tree again and see what response we get.
This is very helpful.
It
I have
is.
one more thing.
I really.
I don't know actually what to comment on because there's been a lot of focus on Queensdale for some reason, but I feel like this is a much bigger, should be a much higher level
Yeah.
conversation. So,
So,
I mean-
Councilor Back, go ahead.
well, just, I guess, kind of going back to your question, what you want to get out of this in terms of your question of prioritizing which plans that we would look at. I agree with Councillor Hanson. I think Lynn Creek and Lions Gate should be up there, but I wanted to, I kind of want to discuss each of them.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's maybe good to come back to where, the meat of the matter is because, coming back to the OCP vision, which, was re-endorsed for the OCP update, it was re-endorsed as part of the OCP action plan in 2021. And, I think across the board, there is kind of a lot of life left in that vision. And that saw at least 75% of future growth going to the 4 key growth centers of Lynn Creek, Lions Gate, Lynn Valley, and Maplewood. So, that should probably take the bulk of the focus in terms of where we want to make sure, we're planning for the, we have limited resources. So if we're going to apply them, we want to put it to where we're going to see the most growth.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, Councilor Back. No, Councilor Pope, go ahead.
Are other areas out of the question?
No.
In the district?
No.
Is everything on the table here? Because if
Yes.
everything's on the table, then I hadn't intended to speak about this, but I have spoken sort of rather casually to Mr. Melbourne about it, which is my vision of really developing south of Marine Drive, south of Marine Drive at Pemberton, actually, and extending down to First Street, and that whole underutilized commercial zone in there, where we're starting to see some, some activation with, a couple of breweries, restaurants, that kind of thing, more than a couple, which is great. But I think so much more could be done with those buildings. I think we could see ultimately something like Granville Island in that whole area, in terms of having industrial mixed with residential on top. And I've long felt that all this pressure we're putting on, Lynn Valley and Phibbs and other places in our town centers could be hugely alleviated by enabling more housing to go in there in conjunction with maintaining light industrial there as well, to maintain the services and everything else. And I think, I know that builders are keen to do that sort of thing these days, where you've got, you got your mechanic or your dance lesson place on the main floor, and then up above you've got residential. And that whole corridor in there, to me, is going to explode, particularly with the city's buildup of the Walmart and former Sears mall being completely redeveloped with a number of high-rise towers. Plus, you've got the bus rapid transit coming in as well. And to me, it's a perfect time to just consider that. What could we do with that area? Could it be a Granville Island? Could we create a huge new environment for business to invest in, and as well as developers and people wanting to, organizations and others wanting to bring in various types of housing that we so desperately need. So I would love to see some kind of information on, where it stands now in terms of zoning, and what might be possible.
I could share certainly in terms of the conversations that in the OCP update, we did have conversations around Pemberton in that area, because the current planning for the BRT envisions a station at Pemberton and Marine, or in that vicinity.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, we chose not to delve into the question of Pemberton, because it was going into the industrial area, and there's a history, and this is why the region and the district have been very cautious about introducing residential uses into industrial areas. So it'd be something that certainly is worthy of conversation, but we would certainly want to be very cautious about that, because industrial land and some of those industrial uses are very scarce, yes.
Yeah, and so that's why I'd like to have that conversation. What is possible there? Can we retain industrial use while building up more housing that we need in the district? Again, this is like thinking outside the box and throwing something out there that is not in your checkbox list of things. But there it is.
I will make one comment on it, which is just simply, I don't think the easy LI zoning, which is mostly in Pemberton, we've got a little bit of it in Maplewood, I think, it's mostly on the Pemberton corridor. I don't think it's become what it was sold as at the time, in that very few places have been built out taking advantage of ECLI, even though it's been in there for 20 years. And so, I think we should be reviewing ECLI in that corridor, and trying to find some other uses that are more economically viable or beneficial in that area. I'm a little more cautious about putting more housing south of 15th because we had a big debate at the time ECLI was implemented about the good neighbor policy and how you could incorporate light industrial directly with residential, and It does have its challenges, but I would like to see a better utilization or a change to EZLI to prompt some change in that area. I know I'm normally the guy who's like, you need more roads. Pemberton is this odd little spot in the district of North Vancouver that's gotta be 200 feet across. Like it's so wide. The parking lanes are wide, the driving lanes are wide, there's 4 driving lanes in it. Like and nothing that leads into it is the same kind of width as Broadway of Pemberton. And so maybe there's an opportunity to road diet or rethink that space and do something interesting on the edge in that corridor. But I'd like to see EZLI revisited.
It's the least congested road in the district.
And yet it's the widest, that unfortunately makes it feel like you can drive faster and faster and faster. It's fortunate that the traffic controls on either end slow people down, because otherwise it'd be an issue. I have Councillors
wait,
Forbes and Neary. Oh,
I'm
Councillor Pope.
I'm not quite finished.
Okay.
Almost. So the other one is the Edgemont Village Center Plan and Design Guidelines. Yes, 2014. And when I went through that document from 2014 last year, as I pointed out during one of our meetings about the 4-way stop, there is ample opportunity to use those guidelines from 2014 to improve Edgemont Village. And so some of it may be outdated, but a lot of it isn't. And why reinvent the wheel? That's it.
Thank you. Councillors Forbes and Neary. Councillor Forbes, go ahead.
Well, I just want to mention something. I'm partial to Lynn Valley. But when people think of Lynn Valley, they think, oh, big, large area of Lynn Valley, let's put everything there. We can put another 500, 800 homes in there. But what we've seen over the last several years, and actually I think Kelly said something about it, sent something into us already, is we have an awful lot of older purpose-built rental buildings throughout that sort of around the center, not even right in the center, but sort of around the center. And some of them are still in the center, designated center area. And I really think that, as it's already been said before, we really need to keep in mind that that's the housing we need to hang on to. We can't just go in and decimate and take out 4 or 5 of those buildings, because we just can't do that. So I really think when we're thinking about developing and we're thinking where we can put more new homes, I really want to protect those purpose-built homes in Lynn Valley. Because if you look at the other sensors that we're talking about, there aren't purpose-built homes in there. I mean, all the ones down in Lower Lynn have been bought up by developers, and then now they're being, Mr. Milburn's eyes are going back.
Think about all the rentals, yeah.
But basically, Lower Lynn, all the purpose-built, there might be the odd couple in there that the district still owns or something, but they are gone. And so the only one that stands out, Maplewood still has some too. But the only one that really stands out that has good transportation close to a lot of facilities is Lynn Valley. So I just want to speak up for that we really need to make sure that we protect that when we're thinking about developing and getting more housing.
Councillor Muir.
I find this a really challenging meeting, because I feel like it's just like, what do you want? Here's the key to the candy store. How do you want to envision the future? In an hour with no data, no hard numbers. What is the loss of industrial and commercial on the North Shore? What is the future projections of what we're going to need? The OCP was built as a sustainable document that focused on density in town centers, close to transit, building on jobs and the economy, protecting affordable housing. We didn't do a lot of that. We redeveloped a lot of it, but we didn't protect a lot of it. And making sure that people could live, work, and play here. And where are the numbers in regards to jobs that have been lost versus housing that has been gained, and housing for who? I don't know if I've really been through a process like this when we're talking about just off the top of our heads. Let's look at Queensdale. Let's look at what we could do there. Let's look at EZLI zoning. Like, let's bring in actually some commercial realtors and some current business owners and understand really what we're facing. Because if we start redeveloping with breweries and housing everywhere, and not that there's anything wrong with the odd brewery here and there, but if you look at like Esplanade, you've taken out, there's been a lot of businesses that have been removed to turn it into an entertainment district. And we're the ones that are picking up the slack in regards to that loss, because we still have commercial areas like Pemberton and like First, Welsh. Those areas we need to protect at all costs, because when you lose those businesses, they're gone forever. 25 years ago, we rezoned commercial property on Main Street, and we took out jobs, and we did it on Hunter too. We took out jobs from light industrial land, which was another major bullet in the official community plan: protect industrial commercial land. And what did we do? We rezoned it and took out jobs that paid $50 an hour 20 years or 15 years ago, and put in condos. So we have really not followed our OCP. The major bullets of that plan that were worked on so hard by the community, we did not pay attention to those pieces in the plan. And now we don't even have funding for the buses for the transportation that's going to support the plan. And that was another huge piece of it, because that corridor was seen as being able to support those town centers, and we don't even have the money to put the buses on the road. So I just really am very concerned by this discussion, that we're giving, an indication that we'd like to, re-look at these areas without a very wholesome discussion, without data, without information, and without a plan to protect what is important, which are jobs, sustainability, how we're going to pay for it, financial sustainability, and what our inventory right now of housing is. We keep talking about, boy, we need more housing, we're in a crisis. Well, are we? Or did the crisis stop because we shut down immigration, international students, and now we've got a huge number of units and development companies folding? I don't understand. And a bridge that is not able to deal with the congestion that we've got right now. So, I just feel like I don't even really know what we're doing here. It's puzzling.
Ms. Atha?
Thank you for your worship. Maybe just to back up a little bit in a sec, I appreciate the comments around bigger picture, data, and some of the history that was shared. One of the other reasons for wanting to come tonight was to set the stage, as Jason said at the beginning, for the upcoming workshops. So I know we focused on some of the thinking around town and village centers. To back up, the small-scale multi-unit housing workshop coming up, it was initially scheduled for next week. So we wanted to make sure that council had some pre-information set out, for example, in the report, some of the questions. Again, Jason went over it. Some of them are on page 26 of this agenda. So it was to try and not overload with too many big things coming in a row. So what I would
Maybe we should talk about
offer-
Shmoo then.
What I would offer is, we've got a few extra weeks now until the small scale multi-unit housing workshop is changed to likely February 9th, and then February 10th for zoning. These pieces overlap. Again, this was set out in the overview. Small scale multi-unit housing, what is the zones gonna look like? That workshop will give you a flavor of that. That then comes back for the zoning workshop, which is another really important building block to the zoning bylaw, which is a big document coming forward with many zones later in the spring. So I would offer again, looking at thinking about some of those questions around small scale multi-unit housing, exemptions, for example, preserving areas for future growth along the frequent transit areas, and then some of the details. And that, when that report comes through the agenda, we're happy to have conversations, questions with you, so that we can make the best time of what will, I think, be really needed workshops on those two future dates.
Yes,
Thank
we'll
you.
look forward to those workshops.
Councillor Beck?
Well, I just wanted to thank staff for all the work and try to leave things on a bit of a positive note. I think we have a really fantastic OCP. Yes, there's challenges with it, and it's starting to show the areas where we really need to address as the community changes. But I think the foundation of it really works, and our town centers are great. And yeah, we do have a community that's changing. We have all kinds of challenges, just like most communities do. We're not unique to them. But this is the only community I've ever lived in, and I think it's actually getting better in a lot of ways. So it's easy to kind of focus on the negative and really get drawn down that path. But I just want to raise us up a little bit and remind us that we live in a great community, one that I'm now raising 2 young kids in, and I'm realizing what a great community it is for kids. But we have to make sure that we're looking to the future and planning in a way that's going to keep it sustainable and a great community going forward. So I don't know, I just wanted to kind of put that out there, that there's a lot of good things in place. We have a great official community plan and a vision, but lots of opportunities to kind of tweak it. But I think there's a lot of things that are working. So.
Thank you. Councillor Forbes.
Can I just ask a question in your scheduling and your planning, and how much other than the 2 workshops for the zoning and for the, I just went blank, SHMU, yeah. Other than those 2 workshops, how much other opportunity would there be for the public to make comments about things that we may end up talking about? Like,
What's the public process?
SMU will have to have a
Hearing.
hearing. because
yes,
it's an OCP
yeah, it's in here, yeah.
Yeah.
The zoning and SHMU will be, but what other, like, if we start looking at all of these things that have been thrown out, we can't look at, for sure. But whatever we decide to look at, how are we gonna make time for the public to be able to comment on it to us?
Sorry, and just to be clear, comment on the selection of what we're prioritizing or comment on the results of what we have prioritized?
Either or.
So on the selection of what we prioritized, it's public in this sense.
Yeah.
But once we actually decide to start implementing things, then there would be the respective public hearing processes for
each thing.
Public
for
hearing.
each thing in implementation. I don't know, Mr. Smith, if I got that.
Yeah,
Public hearing?
I think that we certainly will be having a public hearing on the zoning bylaw update.
Yeah.
And part of that will also include SHMU and
Yeah.
the OCP amendments necessary to implement that. So that is coming, that will be a public process, a public hearing for that. There is some information you'll see when we come forward with for the SHMU workshop, kind of given the timeframes and what we have to do, we will be doing some public outreach and informing of what is taking place to the community, and that'll be presented to council to communicate some of the issues that are being dealt with and why we're dealing with this. So to make sure that there's a level of information there to help inform the conversations that will inevitably be taking place about this. So yes, there is some public engagement being envisioned, but again, want to emphasize we're on a very tight timeline because of the deadlines imposed upon us by the province.
Yeah, no, I understand that. That's why I'm concerned about the public.
I was just going to add a little bit on the zoning side. So the zoning public engagement really picks up from where we went out with the OCP team and doing all the OCP engagement last year. During that time, we talked about the evolution of the single family neighborhoods and talking about what people like to see. And we certainly heard a lot of feedback, whether it's with regards to additional multi-generational housing opportunity or just multi-unit like SMOO kind of opportunity. So we built on that, and then we moved on to the employment-based zones, the industrial and then commercial zones. And we are going to be doing business outreach that's coordinated through our economic development office. and, reaching out to chambers, to various businesses. We're going to activate the business survey, the survey that we've done with all the permit holders or people who have home permits. We do that survey annually. And we also have a website on our zoning, and then we try to direct people's traffic to the website. And then the website would have all the draft language of all the zoning key changes. A lot of the zoning updates have a lot of technical details that people are not really interested in. We're trying to streamline it. But when it comes to key things like, say, keeping the industrial lands, keeping the employment lands, all those key points will be on the webpage. And so there will be some upcoming webinars, there will be like engagement.
Just the council will provide this in writing for you, so you can help amplify any opportunities with your contacts in the community. So we'll give that to you in writing, so we're developing with our professional communications department, some specific engagement. As I think has been noted earlier, some of the engagement will be at the informed level, such as with SMOOC, because it's
prescribed.
It's prescribed. But other things where there's more flexibility, opportunity, we want to create more opportunities within the timeframe we've got. And so we'll give that to council in writing, so you can see the opportunities that are proposed. Share that as well. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Forbes. Councillor Muir.
You talked about the engagement that we had last year in regards to the legislation, right? We went out 3 times and then we went out again, right? We had how many engagement, like we had 224, I think, people that went through those open houses. So it wasn't an overwhelming number. When we built the OCP, it was a huge communication undertaking.
Sure.
To get people to come and be involved in it. We had theater sports in the chamber to draw people in, and we actually catered it to get the community in. It was a huge event because we wanted to engage as many people as we could. And we did that numerous times. I think it would be really helpful for you guys to look back at the process that created that document. Reaching out to the business community and current owners. I mean, one thing that I think that we should look at, and I don't want to say legally non-conforming because I know you hate that word, but when we decided to allow daycares in every zone, we impacted light industrial property and we impacted retail. And we didn't move very quickly to look at redevelopment options that would allow a retail or commercial business on the main floor by allowing or retail on the main floor and then allowing daycare on the second floor. We just said we need daycare, so we're going to allow it in every zone, and for every action there's a reaction. And there was an impact. So commercial properties like Queensdale down the road with a little strip mall with multiple little services in it, and half of it now is a daycare. Commercial property in the Cove, the same thing. So I think we really have to revisit these things. We often make these decisions because there's a huge need, but we did have a presentation by Vancouver Coastal Health, and we talked to the school district, and a lot of those needs have been addressed in different ways. There's a number of private daycares coming in now. I really think that we should really watch that and be careful because things evolve and shift and move. And maybe, I think back to the school district when they wanted to close schools. Well, we wouldn't be doing that right now, would we? Thank God we didn't close them. Thank God the school district just leased them out rather than because they wanted to sell them and redevelop the property. And where would we be now? So this is part of the problem with us as government is that I don't always feel like we act in real time. We're not really, in the moment. I would say we have brought in before commercial realtors to come and talk to us about what is going on in the business community, what is going on, in the region, to help advise. And I think we need to do more of that with real data and be able to react a bit quicker. To be flexible, but also we need to tighten up some of our uses because we've got areas where, you know, we don't have the services that we need. And we've redeveloped these areas. The town centers are a great example. And I think we've lost a lot of opportunity. And I cannot help but always reflect back to the city of North Vancouver. It was a very intentional plan in Lower Lonsdale, very intentional. Richard White told you, you know, the first thing they put in Lower Lonsdale and Esplanade was a grocery store. It was the first permit that was issued because they knew if you're going to build on density, you need food. So that's what they did, and they went from there. It was a plan that was very well executed. And, you know, it's been a bit bumpy for us. We have to look back and reflect and learn from this and try to amend going forward. So I think there's a lot of those things, those minimums and maximums. I think we put them in that North Shore or that Blue Shore, but nothing else. It should be throughout the municipality. If we're going to do commercial and retail, make it small so it's affordable because lease rates are high and mom and pops don't need a bunch of space. Old space is affordable. Old housing is affordable. Protect that.
I'm gonna have an unpopular view. Nobody likes to hear politicians talk about the council term. You should be thinking 20 years and 30 years and 50 years. The reality is we have 18 more meetings until the new council. And it's probably gonna take about 6 months to go through any of these planning processes in any earnest way. And if I recall correctly, 2014 to 2018 council, they decided to do these planning processes right before the election. And the problem is the makeup of the council changed quite a bit. And they didn't want to implement what the previous council did that worked for at the time. So the Maplewood plan, the extension of the Maplewood plan. So we have to be a little realistic about stuff that not only we can pass, but that we can start to do work on as a group. And then move the next chunk to the very early in the next term, some of the more major pieces. So, you know, at the beginning I highlighted the space near Winter Club. You could probably deal with that before we go into the next election and start to make some material changes in that one. I know realistically, there was 97 meetings leading up to the adoption of the Marine Drive plan. And so it was a massive public undertaking, and it's not something that you can complete and implement before you get through the next election cycle. And it probably is big enough that it deserves to be how you lead off the next election, and maybe Pemberton as a big part of that too. But I know people don't like to speak in those terms. I'm just trying to say what we practically can achieve within our work plan in the remaining time that we have as a council. We're in an election year. We just have to have that in mind, even though nobody likes it. So, not to be the cold bucket of water and some of that stuff. Apologies for that, but if we're starting stuff from this point, I want to get it finished. I don't want us to be starting stuff that just is very large planning processes that take too long. So just strategic in that sense. Councillor Forbes?
Sorry, I don't want to deflect from what the point you just made, because it's very important. And if we start something we can't finish and the next council doesn't want to take it on. But I'm just wondering, when we come to the zoning, are we going to get an opportunity to see, because we run into problems sometimes about all the things we put in there that can be under that zoning. Can we tighten up which uses under each zoning? Can we look at that?
Yeah. Absolutely.
I'd like to see that.
And I think, you know, the issues we're hearing tonight, we've heard them before, and we know that there will be conversations about childcare, whether or not we maintain the general childcare or there's an alternative. And then the other uses of what are the opportunities to either limit or create opportunity for them. And also how do we protect our light industrial and create enabling lands, because they're going to be nothing but become more important for us and for the nation going forward. We know, so all of these things we're hearing, And I really appreciate the conversation and the chance for all of you to hear from each other too. And we look forward to bringing forward and engaging with the community on some important vital updates for zoning. And that's going to be an important thing within this term of office. At least the opportunity is there for council and the community to give direction on those matters.
Do you have members of the public present? I don't have anyone signed up ahead of time, but we'll just put it out there. I don't know if I have virtual participants as well. I believe I do. And so I guess, would anybody like to speak for up to 3 minutes on the matter? Something we've missed, something you think still needs to be highlighted? I don't see any virtual hands popping up either. All right, well, I would say that we have concluded the business of this evening's meeting, the receipt for information, so I will move receipt. Is there a seconder on it? Second by Council Back. Prepared to call the question. All in favor, contrary minded, motion is carried. Again, thank you very much to staff for preparing the reports for our consideration this evening, and thank you, Council. Have yourself a fantastic evening. Good night.